Set like a jewel in the center of California's Sierra Nevada, Yosemite Valley, with its grassy meadows, towering cliffs, tumultuous rivers and cascading waterfalls, has been the inspiration for such notables as Ralph Waldo Emerson and Ansel Adams. Hi, I'm Ray Lear. Nestled on a hillside overlooking the Merced River at the mouth of Yosemite Valley is the home and studio of sculptor William Hunter.
I always felt like I was trying to capture the Zen moment in that tree, which made it the most expressive. How can I take this chunk and bring out every one of its positive qualities, or the most of them? And so sometimes the wood is so expressive, that's all you want to capture. And then sometimes it's a very subdued piece of wood. It's straight grain, there's not a lot of activity in there, and that's where I bring myself into it.
Drawn by the magnificence of this great valley like many before him, Hunter began his quest to translate the beauty of his environment into works of art in the early 1970s.
My approach is I've got a concept, a basic design, and a feeling, and then I select the piece of wood. And from there on, it's pretty spontaneous. You've got a little flaw, you've got a spot you want to accentuate, and those things determine things like whether you've got a high shoulder or a low shoulder or a round form or a tiny foot or how it's going to float. All these different things are running through your head. And if I try and do that before I get to the piece of wood, it feels contrived and mechanical. When I'm there with the block of wood, it feels very natural. It seems to flow.
Well, your pieces definitely go with the grain, you might say. You have an uncanny ability to really find those highlights.
Well, I spend a lot of time in contemplation, and it's kind of like the carpenter, measure twice, cut once. Well, I feel the extra time at the beginning where I can really try and get in touch with the piece is well worth it down the road. I develop the ideas, get depth, and that really helps me in carrying out the piece. But as we were talking earlier when we were in the park, sculpture is continual problem solving, and some of the new work grew out of problems with old work, grinding through the wall and being a little careless, and all of a sudden you've got an inspiration for a new piece, a new series. And it's the Willie Mays, there's good in every bad theory. So sometimes the accidents really do help you out and push you forward. It's exciting time in the field because I feel like certainly they've been doing woodwork for hundreds and hundreds of years, but in terms of the field of wood turning getting a appreciation as an art form, it is just exciting every day. The new exhibitions, new collectors coming in, new galleries doing this and that, and the way the artists are stretching out, it couldn't be really much more exciting.
What drew you up into this beautiful valley?
We formed a little group that was interested in getting out of the city and getting to the country. And we explored Oregon and way high in Northern California, some around the Bay Area. And we were just kind of close and here and there. And we came up here for a camping trip and walked back on the historic trail that goes through the property. And on the way out, we noticed that it was for sale. And we looked at each other and went, wow, this is great. Right here at the confluence of these two rivers, these beautiful mountains and all this, and these two beautiful roadside buildings. We could get a business of some kind going right away. And we pooled money with a group in college and pulled it off. It was very difficult because at the time this was worthless land. For sheep grazing. Wasn't good enough for sheep grazing. So it was tough to get a loan, but we stuck with it and moved up here from Los Angeles in 1972. It was not a commune, but we did need to live quasi-communally to get it all hooked together at first. And then as time went by, we were able to select areas and graduated from basic shacks to travel trailers to modest homes, and then kept adding on. And the first section of the studio was $900, all scrounged materials, all used things, and that's where the business started up here.
Well, that's not only where the business started. Wasn't that also where you were living when you
Actually, the first move, I was in a little 17-foot travel trailer on the other side of the river. And then after a while, I added a room onto the wood shop so I could have electricity and a few more amenities, water. So it's just been kind of a step by step. We really pioneered this place. It had been...
So Harvey lives across
the river, and Barry and Letty, who've since gotten a divorce, live down at the bottom. Letty is still here. Barry was the student body president where I was going to school. So we all had a prehistory and trusted each other, worked together well. And it's kind of mind-boggling to me that 25 years later, 3 of the 4 families that pioneered here still live here and still talk to each other and do each other favors and have a family feeling. So that's what's kept us here, because it is remote, it is isolated, which is great when you are in hyper-focus with your work. and it allows me to get a lot done. And then I balance that with blasting out of here when I've got canyon fever. I work a lot with the Cocobolo because the cutter that I'm working with is terrific with the forests. He's doing selective cutting. He goes out with the forest rangers and they pick selectively, so there's no clear cutting. There's no bulldozers dragging him through the forest, and he's engaged a lot of the local people to grow potted plants on their farms and get the replanting going. So Cocobolo has been easy to work with because of that. But at this point, I would say I probably used 300 or 400 different types of exotic wood. And some crack, some warp, some lose their color. Some, you know, they've all got a number of positive and a few negative. And Cocobolo, ebony, pink ivory wood, satin wood, all really sing to me because I like the vibrance of their color. I like the hard surface. Really responds well to my finishing technique. I started out as a pipe maker, as you know, 30 years ago, and they use a 4-step polishing technique to polish out their briar pipes, and it allows it to breathe and live, yet it gives you a protective, burnished finish. And so that became my finish of choice through the pipe field and carried on over into the turnings. And early on, I kind of related to myself as a gem cutter in wood. And here was this rough stone, and I was going to try and capture this beautiful, faceted piece out of it. And I enjoy that. And satin wood, pink ivory wood, you've got the characteristic called chatoyancy, which is that glimmer that a tiger eye stone gives you. Right. Oh, that's just electric in the side of a piece. And so that's why the fascination with wood. There's always mysteries in there. There's always surprises, and great fun exploring the different woods.
I was surprised to see the number of files involved. I realized you cutting them through, or even on the fluted pieces, but your pieces demand so much more handwork than most of the lathe vessels that are out there.
They are in my hands. After they come off the lathe, they are in my hands all the time they're being worked. With the saw, with the disc sander, and the files. The files are relatively new with the basket series because as marvelous a tool as the disc sander is, it's not known for minute detail. And as I get more particular and more fussy and want the work to do more things, I needed different ways of getting there. So the files came into play, much tinier discs, rotary cutting tools, more hand sanding. I just kind of was going for everything I could, and files allow great precision. You can really draw that line just down into a hairline.